Hey guys, doing LeetCode number 5, known as Palindromic substring. So giving a string S, return the known as Palindromic substring and S. So for an input S, we have BABAD, the output is BAB, explanation ABA is also a valid answer, and for the second example, given string S, CBBD, output BB would be the answer. For palindrome, we it just means like a string is like a inverse of each other, so you go AB or BAB and ABA. They're kind of like a mirror image of each other. And same thing here with BB. So a classic one would be the word race car. Um, it's exactly mirror opposite of each other except for the middle, which is the character E. And we are going to solve this in the language Kotlin. So let's get started. First, there's our multiple solution approach to this problem. I am going to go with the one where um, we are going one where we are looping through the string, and each time I'm looping through it, I'm going to consider the character I'm at the center of the palindrome, and I would so as I go through this, if I'm at the character A, I would ex expand it from the middle to go one on the left and one on the right until I reach either the end or some other edge cases, such as like the two sides doesn't equal to each other. Then I would um, return back the longest length of the palindrome that I found, and then I would compare it to my existing longest palindrome character, and if it's greater than it, then I'll overwrite it and uh, return back as answer. So before getting started, I guess well, getting started, I'll start writing the function to get the palindrome length from the index I'm in. So get pal length. So I'm going to accept three parameters here. One for um, one, I accept the string, and then I also accept the left index and the right index that I'm going to start looking from. So instead of because we could have cases where we could have the following cases where we have BB and BAB with a character in the middle. This function is going to get called twice, and then for this case, the left would be index of 0, uh, left index of 0, and then for the right index would equal to 1. And for cases like this, left would be index of 1, and then right would actually also equals to index of 1 because I want them to be the same. So when I decrement the left, it would goes to 0, and when at the same time increasing the right, it goes to 2. And for this case, I had it 0, 1, so I am comparing these two. So if I have something like ABBA, left would start at 0, sorry, it would be starting at 1, and the right index starting at 2, and then when I decrement left, it would become 0, and then the right would become 3. So that way I could get an F. Okay, so first thing I just want to write some edge cases in case like some things get messed up. So if left for some reason is greater than right, I just want to return 0 because the length is not found. And I am also going to reassign left and right to make it into var, so I could I can modify and reassign this variable. And yeah, so starting writing a while loop to go and do navigating both left and right until I find the longest length. So some edge case to consider, I need to make sure the left side is greater than or equal to 0, so it doesn't get out of bound. It will always be at 0. Would be the last value, and then same thing for the right side. Right have to be less than s dot length. And then I guess the key to the palindrome is that s of left has to equals to s of right. Um, this is to making sure that when the left always have to equal to right, and if it isn't, this is where it stops. So like if you have one at C, and these will actually change. We have C and CD, and when we reach here where C does not equals to D, we know we need to stop and then return back whatever the data we had here. So for this, left would increment by 1, and then right would left would decrement by 1, and then right would increment by 1. And finally, we want to return the length that we found for this. So for cases, so if we look into some examples, if we have a character BB, we know that the right, if we go do it, where index the left is 0 and then the right is 1. Um, After it goes to the while loop, left is actually current left would equals to -1. Since it started with 0 and then we decrement it, so it's -1, and then right would equals to uh, 2 since it started left equals 0, right equals 1. Since it started right started with 1, and when we increment it, right is now 2. So I need to figure out the length of this, which we already know is 2. So in order for that to happen, we need to do usually a good way is the right side minus the left side. So if we do right minus left, which equals to 2 minus 1, which equals 2 plus 1, which equals to 3, we know that this is still not right because it should be 2. So uh, it is just, one of these -1 thing. So we need to do 3 minus 1. We need to set it to right minus left minus 1, so it equals to 3 minus 1, which equals to 2. So this is the answer that we want where we needed a -1. And then we could do the same scenario for something like AABB where left equals to 1 and then right equals to 1. So for this case, these are like the two main scenarios that we need to consider, the two main edge cases to figure out these formula where we need -1, where we need +1, etc. So for this case, we know that left is 1 and right is 1 at initial, and then when we go through the while loop, first iteration left is at 0, right is at 2, and the next iteration left is at -1, and then right is at 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is where we set it, and left is at 1, right is at 3. If we follow the example above, if we do right minus left, we get 3 minus 1, which equals 4. And because we know the length is 3, this is actually wrong. So wrong, and then wrong, right? So we know that's wrong. So we know it's just actually missing another minus 1, so 3 minus, so it equals to 4 minus 1, which equals 3, which is correct. So this is just explaining the formula for the length of the palindrome that we want to return. So we want to return the right side minus the left side minus 1, and also just want to create the return type here. So when we call this um, we call this function, that is what we will be returning, the length of it. So going back into this one, again, I want to loop through each character, each index, and then send each one go through this pattern, but also for both cases. So we need to do the current index and also the current index plus one. Getting started, just some edge case to consider. If our s.length equals 0, we want to just return an empty string because there isn't, uh, we could return s technically because it's just empty string. Um, Next, I'm gonna create two variables, a left index and then another one right index. So this is for another edge case. If we only have one character, we would technically just want to return uh, the first character if we only have one. So I guess we could also do it here, or as that length equals 1, we'll just return s for it. But this would be the default value, so that way when we are looping through it, we at least have a max to check, because you technically want a max index, keep track of the max longest palindrome that you found. So in case BAB and ABA, you could keep the BAB. Or if you find something longer, so the first time is B, and then BA isn't one, but then you have BAB, so you want to overwrite it. So that's why we have this to keep track. Okay. Next, I am using repeat, so just like a fancy way to write a for loop. Uh, for loop in Kotlin to just repeat I all the way to the nth. So just running the function inside here s.length times. So we want to call get palindrome length and then passing in s with I, and then another one with I plus 1. So this is covering these two base cases here, where uh, this one is down here if we want to do it by itself. We want to make sure it matches by itself, and then it could go left and right at the same time. And then down here is a case where if the next character is the same, so then it would uh, your I starts at 0 and then the right side start at 1. And we are technically doing both of these at the same time, so we are calling BB and then going to the while loop, because that would be the length 1 for this case. And now we want to just find the uh maximum length between these two, so we know which one is the one to use, or which, because after all we want the longest. And next up we want to write an if statement to check to see if the max is greater than our existing max. So over here we have a length of 0, and we want to make sure max is greater than that, because if it beat it, we want to keep track of it. So, and max is the length. So if it is greater, we want to set the new left index, and also set the new right index. And in order for me to figure out what this is, I look at the two edge cases again, and we know these variables. We know the variable max and then I. So for this case, we know that for the case BB, we know I equals 0, and we also know that max for that case was 2, and we need to set and we want to set left index, which is at 0. And we also know that 2 is the size 2 is the size of the palindrome, but because we are looking for the left index and we assume I is the middle, we would actually want to do something like divide by 2 to the max. So here are two ways to get the left index. So starting with I minus max divided by 2, or I minus max minus 1 divided by 2. And these are just some basic math things you have to consider to know which one to be using, if you need to minus 1 or not minus 1. And I'm just explaining what happened when you go through both of these and which one would be the right one to pick. So for our case, I is 0 minus 2 divided by 2, which equals to -1, or I is 0 minus 2 minus 1, which is 1/2, which equals to 0 when you are dealing with integers. So we know that this is the wrong. Based on that, we know that this is wrong. Wrong. This not equal to 0, and then we know that this is correct and equals to 0. So we could do the same thing for this case to just prove that we are right. If we had stuff like BAB as a case, and we know that I for this case would be 1 because the index is at 1, and then the max is actually 3, and left index is at 0. So we have we have the two cases, we divide by 2, and if we plug them in, 1 minus max, which is 3, divided by 2, 1 minus 1, which equals to 0, which is correct, actually. Correct, since it equals to 0, and then we had the case here where I is 1 and then max is 3 minus 1. So this equals to 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So this is also correct. And that's a good thing that they're both correct. However, because it fell on one of the edge cases over here, we know that we cannot use this formula and it has to be using this formula. So right here, I'm going to put left index equals I minus max minus 1 divided by 2. And then we could put like some more parentheses if you want to make it look slightly better to know that you have to divide by 2 first, but should be given. And same thing for the right index. So let's go do this code again. We know that um, for BB I equals 0, max equals 2, and right index, the correct right index should be 1. So we want to set it to 1, and again you should be starting at the middle, which is I, and then you want to add something like either max minus 2 or I plus max minus 1 divided by 2 because you want half of it. And if we plug in these values, I equals 0 plus max minus 2 is 2 divided by 2, which is 1, which equals to 1. And that is correct since it equals to 1. And then for the other case, we have I equals 0 plus max 2 minus 1 divided by 2, which equals 0 plus 1/2, which equals 0 plus 0, which equals to 0, and that is wrong since it does not equals to 1. And just for the sake, we should double check it here. And we know 0, 1, 2. So when we plug these in, 1 plus 2 equals to 2, and that is correct. And then when we have 1 plus 2 minus 1 equals to 1 plus 1/2, which equals 1 plus 0, which equals 1, and that is wrong because it does not equals to 2. Yeah, so I want a little bit quick over here, but after plugging in for this formula, I is 1, max is 2. So we have 2 minus 1 equals 1. So we know that it is 1 plus 1 half. And then we know 1 half is 0 in terms of integer dividing integer. And this equals to 1 plus 0, which equals to 1. And it's wrong because it does not equals to 2. So we know that for the right index, we should be using this formula right here. So I did I plus max by 2. So we've just found the right index and the left index of the palindrome for the longest one we found so far, but it will continue looping through each character and consider the index to be the middle of the palindrome and expand it until it finds it. And we check to make sure that the one we do found is greater than the current max size in order to update the left and right index. Okay, finally, we want to return the substring of left index plus the right index plus 1, so that way it returns it correctly. And then we'll run the code and submit. Yeah, sorry this video's a little bit long, but it just gonna do each cases scenario, explaining everything, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this.